I've had a lot of questions as far as where the project is going. Are there any new features? Can you talk more about it? So instead of telling you what's actually been happening, which is just a lot of maturing on the project, I'm going to go over a couple of other features. It's ironic that this was a way for me to wrap up 5 years worth of audio-visual work. And off the back of that, I think in the first couple of weeks, there was something like 1,500 people who've downloaded the repo and played around with it. I made a few videos and it was a lot of fun to see so much interest in this space. This is one new feature I'd single out above anything else, and it is the SDK. This is what keeps the complexity of making visuals in code as simple as it could be. The way that it works is you declare your dependencies and utilities in a doc block at the top of your module. So it could be importing Three.js or P5, D3, your asset pipeline, JSON loading, and what happens is New World, as a piece of software, reads that at runtime and injects everything for you. This means no dependencies, no NPM, no Webpack is needed in order to just get up and running. Each module runs its own sandbox environment, so nothing interferes with anything else. The whole point here is that you spend your time doing the creative work and not fiddling with middleware. I think with these kind of projects, you can spend a lot of time optimizing for how things load and funneling through dependencies. And this takes a lot of the guesswork out of the way. Ironically, it's quite a complex system to try and create a simple solution. Essentially, if you're just using any of the base libraries that come with the repository, you don't need NPM and you can just get up and running straight away. What else have we got? We've got file upload playback. So you can now drop in an MP3 or a WAV file into the composer. You don't have to hook it up to Ableton or a DAW per se. And it's great for prototyping because you can just add in your own composition and off you go. There's a couple of new things like geometry displacement. There's been a lot of pull requests for extending the existing modules as far as what you can do in methods. So that's been quite fun. You'll be happy to know that there's full TypeScript support now. So I had a bunch of messages on the YouTube channel saying like, why is this written in JavaScript and not TypeScript? And I was like, I wrote most of this library 5 years ago, didn't have the time for it. However, now I do. So what else? We've got a few new modules. I added something called the cube growth, which is like a 3D growth visualization. I did some more smaller sort of decals. You know, I noticed that through watching people interacting with the software, they were using a lot of the initial modules that I bundled into the software. So extending those, I think, is going to be important. At that point, there wasn't even a software app. So first thing I had to do was get the Apple certification sorted. I had to ring Apple 3 times just to get the app pushed through. But that's all sorted now. It now has Windows support, Linux support, all of the basics really. So the reason this project exists comes down to a belief I have, which is that the application layer has a direct correlation with the creative output. What I mean by that is the medium through which an artist creates has as much of a route to them finding their own style. I think a good example for this would be the 303 synthesizer. Now, initially it was a commercial failure because it was trying to emulate something else, and only when people started using the tool in a new way did it become this global phenomenon. This gave rise to like acid house and hip hop and things like this. And this comes directly out of the medium's character as a tool, as opposed to just a way to make music. You know, it inadvertently drove this entire new genre, if that makes sense. So the way that New World works is it forces you to think about producing visuals that would otherwise be done in proprietary software using node-based outputs or some sort of Blender UI. Instead, you have to think about it in code terms, and even if you're not massive on coding, it's just simply a new medium for doing this, especially with the technology that we have today. So yeah, working with other people on this project has been a new challenge for me. You know, I mean, this project was my own for demoing and prototyping for 5+ years, and suddenly throwing it out into the world for people to share and explore and introduce their own ideas as part of this open source philosophy has been quite fun. And with that, there's a lot of factors as far as deciding what is implemented as part of the main repository. Where the project was initially built for one specific use case, it has to cater to many. And there's architectural decisions that need to be made downstream of that. So one example would be somebody asked if the project would support serial data, and When I asked why, it turned out that they were making an entire synthesizer that was going to work with the New World software, and without the serial support, this wasn't possible. So considering whether that should be a core supported feature or not is an interesting decision, especially for a piece of software this small. Other people have asked if we could support things like webhooks and API calls, and again, it's up for debate as far as what people will be using it for. And I think over time, as we see more and more people developing with the software and seeing, I mean, one person decided to turn it into their desktop, or I don't even know how, they turned it into their desktop wallpaper, and they had like a reactive system where on their home screen there was a bunch of visuals happening and they had their desktop GUI there. And it's like, I could not have predicted that happening, but it happened. So yeah, there's a lot to unravel, I think, over the next 6 months of the project. If I was to make one observation, it would be, I'd like to see more people making new visuals with the software rather than taking the core parts of the product and putting it into new spaces. I'd like to see people using the composition for creating new audiovisual scenes, because I'd love to see that. I'd love to see how people are employing their own methods in the visuals and composing them for these performances. I've been sent a few videos of people doing this at shows, and I want to see the setups. I don't know whether to create a showcase section. I don't know if this is a thing on GitHub. Maybe I could add it to the project itself or some sort of module library. So if somebody has made a visual, maybe it could actually live on the project as a sort of, not a marketplace feature, but something like this, like a community module tab. Again, lots to think about. But yeah, there's still a lot to do with the repo. The suggestions are always coming in, and I need to simplify the tooling a bit. I feel like it's still a little bit complicated for people to pick up and use. And I think that's only natural when you've got something that treats code as the first-class citizen. But just talking people through the initial stages and how to get up and running could probably be simplified a little bit. But yeah, big learning curve. This is the beauty of open source. It is taking on a life of its own, and I love to see people doing this. The way that I've always worked is something like this. You know, I'll have a period of developing and iterating. I will release the project and you slowly move on to the next one. And I think that's true for most artists, but in this case, it's a little bit different because it creates something open-ended. Open sourcing a bunch of work has hooked me into the project on a more long-term basis. That is to say, where I'd normally have moved on to something else by now. Instead, the past 6 months have gone into massively iterating onto the software and working a bit more deeply within this one.